We will now have Christine Lewis-Coker introduce our Mistress of Ceremonies.
Good evening. Our Mistress of Ceremonies tonight is Miss Gloria Goodman. Many of you probably know her. She's a long-time resident of Lawnside. She's been very active with the Lawnside Scholarship Club, as well as the Lawnside Historical Society. She is committed to the youth and to education. She loves the arts. She is also committed to her family, especially her wonderful granddaughter, Nori, who's a wonderful ball of energy and keeps her on her toes. So I introduce to you Miss Gloria Goodman.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you again for joining us for our second annual Jessie Redmon Fauset Literary Series. I just wanted to remind you that in your program is a survey that we would really appreciate it if you could have it completed before you leave and just hand it over to our Vice President, Joyce Fowler. I also wanted to let you know that we are a tax-exempt organization, and we greatly appreciate any donations or contributions that you would like to make to us, and even including this evening, we're accepting donations. For our listening pleasure, I want to introduce to you NASIR Dickerson and the Renaissance Messengers. NASIR Dickerson is the youngest son of Mr. and Mrs. Robert H. Dickerson. He was born in Philadelphia and raised in Camden. He was the fourth in the 2002 graduating class at Camden High School. He has achieved his academic accomplishments, especially in math, science, and music education. He holds a BA and a MA from the University of the Arts in Philadelphia. NASIR presently teaches music at the Creative Arts Morgan Village Academy in Camden, where he earned the award of the Best Teacher of the Year in 2010. Today, today NASIR produced two wonderful CDs, albums as we know them, called The Journey to the Fatherland and The Revealer. He also performs for many greats such as the Philadelphia Legends of Jazz Orchestra, the Stylistics, the Intruders, and Urban Guerrilla Orchestra. NASIR was also part of a musical team winning an Emmy Award on Saturday, September 24th, 2011. NASIR, I just want to ask you one thing. I know it's either you or your brother that took a group down to New Orleans, and they won 19 first place awards. And then I also believe that they went to Denmark this year.
We went to California, Monterey.
And where did you place?
We went to the Next Generation Jazz Festival. We got a few soloist awards and everything. So it was nice.
This is like the best kept secret of Camden. It's unbelievable what these young people are doing in the creative arts. And 90% of your students go on to college with scholarships. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce to you NASIR Dickerson and the Renaissance Messengers. Let's give them another round of applause. What can we say for these young people? NASIR, you're getting better every time I see you. Hopefully I'll see you at the Detroit Jazz Festival. Okay. That's a place to be, I'm telling you. It is wonderful. So if not this year, next year. All right. I understand that they will have CDs available for sale at the end of the performance. Next, we're going to have the spoken word, and I think Napalm has requested that you guys do a backup for him? Okay. I just want to give you a brief bio on Napalm. Napalm, also known as Lamont Dixon, is a regular on the jazz poetry scene. He infuses jazz, hip-hop, blues, and drama with his performances and workshops. A Philadelphian, Napalm trained at Freedom Theater and the Philadelphia University of the Arts, as well as a tenure with Temple University's Full Circle Improvisational Troupe. Napalm's poetry has been published in African Voices, The Phalanxes, New Poets Revolution, and Essence magazine. He is a recipient of the Phalanxes Society's Excellence in Literature Award and John G. Lewis Medal of Excellence for Art. Napalm is a teaching artist for Perkins Center for the Arts and the New Jersey and Pennsylvania State Council for the Arts, and also Rutgers and Rowan University. Ladies and gentlemen, Napalm.
I have one poem that I want to share with you, and as before, NASIR knows when I'm here and he's here, we're gonna do this together. So I certainly appreciate the band being here to back me up. So I wasn't really sure what I was going to do today for my solo. Linda knows, and those on her committee know that I lost my mom last month, and my mother very much enjoyed coming out and hearing me perform with my own band. So, thinking of Linda, and we have a female guest speaker, and the majority of the room is full of women. So I'm going to do this poem that my mother enjoyed, titled to women. But it was titled Rhapsody in Black, but I've now changed it to Tune for Shirley. And one. Can you all hear me? Okay. So Linda and Lottie, and for Jessie, and for my mom Shirley. Hail, sugar morning women of orange skies. Hail, afternoon sisters of autumn leaves. Hail, midnight mothers of sparkling stars. To thee I sing beige brown ballads of brilliancy and blue-black psalms of satin splendor. Luster silk dark and lovely shades of you I sing. Songs of sweet chariots swinging low I sing. Aretha's R-E-S-P-E-C-T I sing. Renaissance songs of Harlem nights I sing. Songs of leaving on midnight trains of Georgia I sing. While scrubbing floors on hands and knees I sing. Songs of the bullwhip sting I sing. Songs of sullied souls rocking in the bosom of Abraham I sing. Michael Jackson's Billie Jean I sing. Cab Calloway's Money to Moocher I sing. Chuck Berry's Maybelline I sing. When you walk, I sing. When you talk, I sing. When you allow me to love you, I sing. When I have no songs left to sing, I sing. Songs of you I sing. Hail to Mother Earth, the motherland, and Mother Nature. Hail to Mama, Madam, Queen of the Nile, Superwoman, Girlfriend, Honey Child. You remind me of sculpted, scented cherry wood, sanded, enameled, and looking good. Church Mother, Bag Lady, Soul Sister, Wonder Woman, I celebrate the skin that you're in, that you wear so well, as my thirsty eyes drink you down like Zinfandel. Smooth to my fingers' touch and the tip of my tongue. Smooth as an 8-ball rolling towards a corner pocket. Smooth as the cotton fur of cottontail baby rabbits. Smooth as duck butter dripping from my lips. Smooth as the curves of your mahogany hips. Hail to Hattie McDaniel and Althea Gibson and Rosa Parks. Hail to Marian Anderson, Harriet Tubman, and Shirley Chisholm. Hail to Moms Mabley, Billie Holiday, and Ida B. Wells. The essence of the African American woman, and all to life they do bring. To you, I hoist my voice, and to you, I do proudly sing. Thank you.
Lottie L. Joiner is an award-winning writer, reporter, and editor whose journalism career has spanned more than 2 decades. A native of Jackson, Mississippi, Lottie began her journalism career at the age of 17 as a radio announcer for WJSU Public Radio on the campus of Jackson State University. After graduating magna cum laude from Jackson State, she attended The Ohio State University as a presidential fellow and received a master's degree in journalism. After a short stint at Upscale magazine, Lottie joined the staff of Emerge magazine. Unfortunately, it's the now defunct news magazine for African Americans. When she was there, she covered a range of issues from business and education to civil rights and social justice. Lottie is currently the senior editor at The Crisis magazine, the official publication of the NAACP. The quarterly journal focuses on African American social and political issues, history, civil rights, art, and culture. During her tenure at The Crisis, Lottie has headed up several special issues, including the publication's coverage of the 50th anniversary of the Brown versus Board of Education decision, the 3-city funeral of civil rights icon Rosa Parks, and the magazine's in-depth look at the state of African American health. In 2003, Lottie won an award from the Society of the National Association of Publications for her investigative work on school shootings. That same year, she also won first place as the National Association of Black Journalists Salute to Excellence Award for her story, Wednesdays in Mississippi, which is about a white and black women from the North who risked their lives traveling to the Deep South during the height of the Civil Rights Movement to serve students in freedom schools. In May 2010, Lottie received a master's degree in interactive journalism from American University, in which she learned multimedia skills and digital storytelling tools. During her program, Lottie produced stories on suicide among young African American men and food deserts in minority communities. Lottie's work has appeared in a number of national media outlets, including The Washington Post, USA Today, usatoday.com, Heart and Soul magazine, Essence.com, and TheRoot.com. In addition, she's a regular contributor to the Gannett-owned WEB site, Civil Rights in America. She has interviewed numerous celebrities, dignitaries, national leaders, and political figures. Her goal is to tell the untold stories of how social issues impact minority communities and those on the fringes of society. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in greeting and meeting Lottie Joiner.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me? Okay, good. I just wanted to sit back and listen to that band all night. And thank you, Napalm, for the beautiful poem. I want to thank Ms. Goodman for that fine introduction, and I want to thank the Lonside Historical Society for inviting me to speak tonight, especially Ms. Linda Shockley, who gave me a tour of Lonside this afternoon. I went to the Peter Mott House. Excellent, excellent. So now you guys have to hear me after hearing this great band. So I'm going to speak to you tonight on the topic In These Times. When I read the background on Jessie Redmon Fauset, I thought behind every good man is a great woman. But before Fauset became the literary editor at The Crisis magazine, she was a well-traveled intellectual. She was a Phi Beta Kappa scholar who went on to get a master's degree in French. She was certainly a woman before her time. During the height of the Harlem Renaissance, when the Negro was in vogue, Fauset helped craft the voices of Langston Hughes, County Cullen, Jean Toomer, Claude McKay, and many others for The Crisis. Indeed, their art, essays, poems, and personal narratives captured the plight of the Black man in America. These talented souls wrote about the segregation and discrimination that shaped their existence. Music, too, jazz, came out of how Blacks had to improvise in life. A few high notes here and a few dips there. During this time, Blacks and women were treated as second-class citizens. Restaurants, railways, and lodging were segregated. So was housing. Education was separate and unequal. Entertainers could perform at a club, but they could not be patrons of the club. Jessie Redmon Fauset operated in this world. Yet through The Crisis magazine and her own personal essays, narratives, and novels, she helped shed light on the hypocrisy of American democracy. She was a talented Black female, smart, aware, hardworking, but after leaving The Crisis in 1926, she felt that there were limited opportunities for Black women. She became a teacher at one of the nation's premier high schools for Black students in the nation. She even wrote about the scarce possibilities for Black women in her novel, There Is Confusion. Things have certainly changed since Fauset's days at The Crisis. In these times, women can vote, Blacks can vote, African Americans can eat anywhere they can afford, we believe. They can live anywhere they want, or so we think. We can travel first class and stay in the best hotels our money can buy, we hope. We have it real good today, don't we? Or do we? Let's take a closer look at the society we live in today. Black women have certainly come a long way since the 1920s. We have 2 Black female billionaires, BET co-founder Sheila Johnson and media mogul Oprah Winfrey. A Black woman is currently the United States ambassador to the United Nations, Susan Rice. We had a Black woman who was the Secretary of State, and today we have a Black woman in the White House, a First Lady of the United States who is also a Harvard-trained lawyer. Black women are mayors, congresswomen. They run foundations and write award-winning television shows. They are astronauts and scientists, and they are slowly breaking the glass ceiling in corporate America. Just a few years ago, Ursula Burns of Xerox became the first Black woman to head a Fortune 500 company. But where do we see these images of the successful Black woman? Certainly not on television, and I mean specifically reality TV, where some Black women are behaving badly. Adult women fighting, arguing, and tearing each other down for fame and fortune. In the spring issue of The Crisis, which will be out in a few weeks, we ask, where's the current Cosby Show, where Felicia Rashad was a successful lawyer raising 5 children? Or Julia, do you guys remember the show Julia? I think it came on before I was born, with Diane Carroll. Shows with positive portrayals of Black women. By the way, there's a new show called Scandal, written and produced by a Black woman, Shonda Rhimes, and it's about a Black woman. But when we turn off the television, there's even more pressing reality that concerns me. Let's look at the state of the civil rights movement, the financial stability of our community, and the state of the Black family. During the height of the civil rights movement, we saw ordinary citizens risk their lives for the right to full citizenship. They wanted fair and equal treatment, justice. Their courage, bravery, determination, and persistence changed our world. They knocked down the doors of segregation through marches, protests, and demonstrations. Some lost their jobs, some lost their homes, some lost their lives. We have many of the rights we have today because of their sacrifice, but I ask you this evening, have we become too complacent? And I want you guys to answer that a little later. Today, housing is still as segregated as it was 50 years ago, and there has been a resegregation of public schools. About 30% of Black students attend schools where they are more than 90% of the student body. And nearly 40 years after Roe versus Wade, women are still fighting for their reproductive rights. In Congress, men are deciding whether women have the right to choose. In February, there was a panel on women's reproductive rights that didn't include any women. Think about that. Women were not allowed to speak on a panel about female contraception. I couldn't help but think that if more women were represented in the halls of Congress, that panel may have looked a little different. Not only women, but minorities. But there won't be more minorities or women representing us if we don't exercise our right to vote. There's an election coming up in November. According to the U.S. Census, 2 million more Black voters cast a ballot in 2008 than in 2004, helping to elect the nation's first African-American president. The highest increase was among young Black voters between the ages of 18 and 24. But there are forces working to make sure this does not happen again. The NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund recently released a report. It's called Defending Democracy, and it found that last year in 2011, 14 states passed voting measures that threatened to disenfranchise minority voters. One example is the voter ID law, where you need a government-issued ID to vote. According to reports, about 25% of African Americans do not have this ID, compared with only 8% of whites. Students especially would have a hard time meeting this requirement because many have IDs from their home state. They are out of town. They have to call home to get a birth certificate or a social security card or other documentation. Other things that made voting easier in 2004 was early voting, registering to vote on election day, and Sunday voting. All those measures have been targeted. The group responsible for this legislation is the American Legislative Exchange Council. It has introduced this legislation in 38 states. So as a result, I am calling for more political participation. We must know what voting requirements are in our individual states. We must have a valid ID. We must make sure we are on the voter rolls. You don't want to show up on election day and find out that your name has been removed off the voter rolls. If you don't vote, you're not a participant in the political process. I recall a few weeks ago, I drove a young lady home. She was about 21. And the day before, we had a local election for city council. And I asked her, oh, who did you vote for? And she said, oh, I'm not into stuff like that. And it really offended me because, as I mentioned earlier, people died for the right to vote. And people have an attitude of, I'm not into stuff like that. How do we get young people to understand that this counts? How do we convince them that their future is on the line? Which leads me to my next concern, which is economics. These are tough economic times for everybody, but especially if you're a person of color. The unemployment rate is about 7% for whites and nearly 16% or double for blacks. I heard on the news earlier this week that funds for Social Security will be depleted the year 2032. I think that's 20 years from now, right? I'm 39, which means Social Security will be gone right about the time I'm supposed to retire. That really hit home. I'm gonna be working until I'm 80. Have you saved for your future? Do you have an emergency fund? Are you working on getting rid of that credit card debt? How will you pay for unforeseen medical costs? About 2 years ago, a study produced by the Insight Center for Economic Development revealed that there's a huge racial wealth gap in America. The report noted that for every dollar of wealth owned by a white family, a typical family of color only owns 16 cents. Remember, wealth is not how much money you earn. It's not your salary or how much money you are making. Wealth is your net worth minus your debts, how much you're able to save and invest after you've paid all your bills. The report, titled Lifting as We Climb, looked at the wealth gap between women of color and the rest of the population. The results of this report made national headlines. It found that single black women have a median wealth of $100. $100. Nearly half of all single black women have zero or negative wealth. In contrast, never married white women have a median wealth about $2,600. We have to look at our priorities. I was watching a documentary the other day called Good Hair by Chris Rock. And one of the experts on the documentary said that people would rather go into foreclosure or not pay their rent rather than not have their hair done. Did you guys see that? And also a few months ago, there were some popular sneakers that came out. I'm not going to say the name of them, but they were really popular. They were about $200 a pair. People were lined up 3 and 4 blocks, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to buy these sneakers. 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to buy these sneakers. As I mentioned, I went to a local election, and the scene was totally different. No one woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning to wait for the polls to open. There were no long lines around the block. And voting is free. You don't even have to pay $200 to vote. If people only thought about the correlation between voting and their quality of life, we could get more people to vote. Who you vote for can determine the kind of jobs that are in your neighborhood. It can determine the quality of public schools in your community or economic development in your area. We need to look at our priorities. And lastly, one of the major issues I believe we should be concerned about is the black family, especially our black boys. We need to save our sons. We have geniuses in our midst who never reach their full potential. I think we've seen some of the geniuses tonight. They need positive role models in their lives, and not just women, but positive male role models. A few years ago, I did a story for the Children's Defense Fund, and I went to a level 4 school. A level 4 school is a school for students who have severe emotional or behavioral problems. And I interviewed this young man, and he was a mathematical genius. And I asked him, what did he want to be? He wanted to be an engineer. He wanted to attend Morehouse College. But he had been locked up several times in juvenile detention halls. When he turned 18, he was actually sent to jail. This young man was stealing cars and, you know, wasn't going to school. And I just felt if he had a positive male role model in his life to guide him, he could make it to Morehouse. He could make it, he could become an engineer. And so I wondered, what if this young man had a positive male role model in his life? How would his life be different? The other day I was watching Brick City. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that. That's a documentary about Cory Booker and what he's doing in Newark, New Jersey. And there was a scene of a retreat for young black men. One of the directors of the retreat asked a room full of boys how many of them knew their fathers. And not a hand went up. He asked how many knew how to tie a tie. And again, no one raised their hand. So he said, well, you're gonna learn tonight. You're gonna start right here. So while our young women are getting educated, our young men are becoming incarcerated. Many times for small infractions, they are housed like animals, treated like criminals, and are not learning. What does this mean for the black family if our boys aren't at their best? In 2004, a statistic came out, said 50%, half of all black men in New York were unemployed. Had you guys heard that before, 2004? Unemployed. How do they become productive? What does this mean for the future of the black family? Last year, I visited a school in the Bronx. It was called the Eagle Academy for Young Men. They cater to young men between 8th and 12th grades. They take these young men and they pair them with role models. They prepare them for college starting in the 8th grade. In their senior year, all they do is apply to college their senior year. If they are behind, they have mandatory Saturday school. They teach these young men how to tie a tie because they have to wear a tie to school. They are involved in extracurricular activities and they are taught etiquette. There was no metal detector at this school. Instead, there were phrases all around the school that reminded them of their greatness. Quotes from Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., Frederick Douglass, and Malcolm X, similar to a quote up there about character, similar to that quote. I believe we need a school like that in every city. This could be the first step in improving the future of our boys. By the year 2042, the majority of the U.S. population will be minorities, African Americans, Latinos, Native Americans, and Asians. In these times, we need to think about what we're doing now to prepare our youth for that future. I want to conclude that today, when I checked into the hotel, I picked up a USA Today newspaper, and on the front page there were two images. On the left, there was a scene from the Rodney King riots 20 years ago, and on the right, there was a picture of a protest for Trayvon Martin. And the headline said, "Can we all get along?" Then I flipped to the sports section, and there at the top was an article about racist attacks against the black Washington Capitol hockey player Joe Ward, who had scored the winning goal for his team. In these times, we've come a long way since the 1920s, but we sure have a long way to go. Thank you, guys. So now I want to ask you guys questions. Oh, yeah. I just didn't want you guys to hear me talk. So I wanted to ask, and I can bring the mic to you because, thank you. I wanted to ask, what do you think are some of the biggest issues we need to address in the black community? And I will bring the mic to you if you want to raise your hand and tell me, what do you think are the biggest issues we need to address in the black community? Okay. I like this long cord. Okay, listen. Tyler Perry, I think he has a positive message. If you look through Medea, if you look through the Get Up, if you take away the Get Up of the drag queen, he's not a drag queen, but you know, Medea, there's a positive message there. It's how he's presenting it that I think some people are put off on. And you mentioned shows that I like. I'm a news junkie. I like a lot of biographies, documentaries, CNN, headline news. So, but I've seen some of those reality shows. That's why I've seen the fights. Anyone?
Do you think Tyler Perry is better than that?
Do I think he's better
Yes,
than the reality shows? Where the women are fighting and beating each other up and tearing each other down? As I mentioned, I think there's a message. If you look through all that other stuff, he's trying to say something positive. Whereas the reality shows, I don't think anything positive comes out of that. I just think it's for ratings. I think it's to stay on television. I think it's for Twitter followers. I think it's to become famous. I think that's why they're doing it. I think he found a way to attract a certain audience, and he has a formula, and a lot of people like that formula, and so he's sticking to that formula because that's his audience, and they get the message. Yes, ma'am.
I think the lack of male presence in the black community is just more than what we can handle. There are no fathers, there are no grandfathers, there are no uncles, nephews. The few black men who seem to be available are quiet, may be overwhelmed, may be overworked, and may be unhealthy. I think that there's no leadership from black males for
The young men.
adults or children.
Does any black male wanna address that? Would you like the mic?
No, I believe,
Okay.
you know, we talk about all of our boys going to college. Have you ever called a plumber?
Right,
Have you ever called an electrician?
Right.
I think we're forgetting the fact that there are a number of our boys and girls are not college material, but they can work with their hands.
I agree.
If you recall, I believe was it Gates, he went to Harvard, but he didn't finish.
Dropped out. Yeah.
What am I saying? I'm saying college is not for every boy and girl. There are many of the trades and et cetera that they very, 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 very well. When you have a plumbing problem, call the plumber. $75 before he comes in the house.
I know. I called a plumber.
One of the leading plumbers in this area. And I will call the name of Hutchison. He never went to college. Where did he go? He went to vocational school in Penn's office.
I think that's great. Our young men and young women need to be guided, whatever they decide to do, whether it's college or vocational training. They need to be supported. They need a support system, because even if they believe school is not for them, you can do something. You can be creative. You can do something, but they need to be supported. They need to be productive. Yes, ma'am.
First, I want to say that I was born right here, and before anybody gets mad at me, I'm almost 80 years old. So,
Wow, I think we need to give her a hand for looking like that at 80.
The boys, and I certainly support our ladies, but they didn't make the babies by themselves. Now, let us be honest about this. We need to also talk about our young ladies. And I love
Agree.
my young ladies, and I was a member of the scholarship club for over 23 years, and what he spoken many times. Everyone is not college material, but you don't have to act like, I'll say, shamefully.
Right.
And sometimes our young men and women act shamefully. Now, Sundays we had a mentoring program at my church. We had 7 schools that were represented. There's also a mentoring program where they come here to Lawnside School, and they honored a couple of our young men, what they call man up, out of the 8th grade, preparing them so that they can go to high school and know how to act, and know how to dress, and how to present themselves, and speak well. So, as I said, I'm almost 80 years old, and I've seen it all. So, I just want to say that it's not all our young men, because some of our young ladies are participating too. Now, don't be angry, but it's true.
Amen.
All I have to say
Yes.
is my 80-year-old voice.
Thank you so much. I agree. We need programs like that to support our young people, as you mentioned, the girls as well as the young boys. We need programs to support them, teach them how to walk, talk, dress, present themselves in public. Thank you.
I also like to say something else. I take a team once a month up to Camden, New Jersey. And just Wednesday we were there, and we fed 176 people. But you know, almost 80% were black males. But you know, sometimes there were white girls, sometimes there were black girls. But our young men, and I have to be honest, are not out there searching for jobs. Some of them come every day to get fed. And you can do something. It might not be a job that you want to do, but it is a job. And we don't have to always be making babies.
Right. I hear you. Yes, sir.
Yes, I believe one of the biggest things that is confronting our community today is, I would say since probably 2008 when President Obama was elected. I heard on the news, and the same day he was inaugurated,
Mm-hmm.
the Republicans got together and said that, you know, we're not going to have this in our country. And I think the whole tenure of this country has changed, where we now have this brand of conservative, or whatever they want to call it. You know, at one time we were able to call a spade, of what is a Republican today. Back in the day was nothing but a Dixiecrat, a Klan, and you know, and we're being definitely had this onslaught of racism, or the return of overt racism in this country, and we have to be very, very careful because it is going to get worse. You know, I'm optimistic about November, but they are trying everything that they possibly can to get President Obama out of there and move this country farther to the extreme right.
I agree. I think I saw that same report.
Yeah.
The American Legislative Council is the organization that's creating this legislation to voting measures, the voter ID, the early voting, they're trying to rule that out. Sunday voting, the weekend voting, they're trying to rule that out. But we have to vote in November. I think people aren't getting it though. I think we have to really come out and vote. We have to come out in strong numbers like we did in 2008.
It's kind of sad to sit here and kind of listen to different people's opinions of, you know, what some of our issues are. I have a unique experience of being a teaching artist, being able to travel to different states teaching. And I noticed that those schools that excel in terms of academics, in terms of things that are happening in the home, are those schools that have strong PTAs. Those schools
Yes.
that are not excelling are those schools who have zero to no presence from the family. And those schools that do excel, the parents know the principal, the parents know the custodian, the parents know the office workers. And these are the schools that have computers and books, and you have some schools that students don't even have pencils. And when you look around, you see that, and for those parents that do come, for the most part, is moms.
Right, exactly, right. The Eagle Academy for Young Men that I wrote a story about, the school in the Bronx. Your parents, and you're right, it was mostly, the school is for young men, but the parents are mostly single mothers. They have to sign a contract with that school that they're gonna be full participants. If you can't find a job, the school will help you find a job. Anything to support you and your child to, so that your child can achieve. It's a partnership between the school and the parent. So I think you're right, yes, sir.
A few issues I think we've been facing in the Black community, and one would be that we lost our sense of Black history. We don't know who we are, and therefore we have a low self-image of who we are, and we're accepting someone else's image of us. I think that's one of the major issues that's facing the Black community. The other one was that we have misplaced priorities. And we are taking, quote, Hollywood's goals for our lives as opposed to family values.
In terms of the first issue that you mentioned about the Black history, I know in Mississippi, where I'm from, they just passed legislation to teach a civil rights curriculum because there's so much civil rights history in Mississippi. So I think from the 8th grade until the 12th grade, you're gonna have a curriculum, but you're right, most students learn about Black history only in February. They have no sense of, you know, what I call their greatness, the sacrifice of Black people, their creativity, the fact that they have survived through the worst circumstances, and here we are today in the White House. I don't think young people aren't that. Anyone else? How do you guys think the African American community could become more economically viable? You heard the statistics. We have 16 cents. 16 cents compared of wealth compared to the majority. Any thoughts on that about how we can become economically viable? I think that also goes back to the misplaced priorities in terms of how we have to get our priorities in order. What about education? What do you guys think we should do about our education system? I like the idea about the parents. You have to have strong parents in schools. When I was a couple of years ago, I live in Washington, D.C. A couple of years ago, there was a fight at one of the schools in D.C., and the parents came to the school, and the parents were fighting. And of course, you know, the fighting probably was between two young women, and then their mothers got involved. And I said, I bet that's the first time those mothers had been up to that school, was to fight. I wonder how, if they had gone to a PTA meeting, if they knew their teachers, their daughter's teachers, if they knew the principal, you know. So in terms of just getting parents involved, I think is important. Anything else, guys? Well, I want to thank you guys so much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for sharing your thoughts tonight. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Ms. Joiner, so much for that information that you shared with us. I believe that you brought some magazines, some crisis magazines, so everyone in the audience is, you can have one to take with you on your way out. I believe at this time I'm going to invite to come to the podium our president of the Lawnside Historical Society, Linda Shockley.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight, and I'd like to thank Ms. Joiner. I'd like to thank NASIR Dickerson and the Renaissance Messengers. I'd also like to thank NAPALM. NAPALM judges our poetry competition every year, the Spirit of the Renaissance Poetry Competition, so we encourage you to come back tomorrow at 2 o'clock, and the winners from elementary to high school in the Tri-County area will be here to read their poems, and we'll also have a speaker, Dr. Green, who is from the English department at Rutgers University, Camden, who will be speaking on Jessie Redmon Fauset's poetry. So please come back for that. I'd also like to say there's another way that you can get a copy of the Crisis magazine, and that is by paying a yearly membership in the NAACP. Is that correct, Mr. Henderson?
That is correct.
And you get a Crisis magazine as part as part of your membership. So take that into consideration, but feel free to take some copies of the Crisis. We also have DVDs and some t-shirts and some books about the Harlem Renaissance here for sale. And the DVDs of today's program and tomorrow's program will also be available for sale. I'd like to thank Mr. Gibson, Paul Gibson of Word for Word Reproductions. He believes in archiving and recording information, and so we're glad to have him here too. I'd also like to thank all of the officers and supporters of the Lawnside Historical Society, our treasurer, Christine Lewis-Coker, our Vice President, Joyce Fowler, our financial secretary, Gloria Goodman, our recording secretary, Cassandra Butler, Maddie Warren is our corresponding secretary, and Raymond Fussell is our resident photographer, and Clinton Higgs Jr., who will be our master of ceremonies tomorrow, is also our Peter Mott reenactor. So we thank you all for coming, and we thank the New Jersey Council for the Humanities for their support, the Camden County Cultural and Heritage Commission, and the Delta Sigma Theta sorority. Thank you so much, and good night.